So this is the 6th video in a series called the Gender Cake series. So if you have not seen all of them, please start with the Gender Cake overview and work your way up, because this is the last tier and everything will make way more sense if you start from the bottom. So that being said, today we're talking about the perception of others. Now, you guys may be a little bit confused as to why in the world the perception of others would even be a relevant conversation when it comes to your gender cake. And that is an important distinction. And I want to... Distinction. That word wasn't right. That is an important question. I already forgot what I said, so I don't even know what word makes the most sense anymore. Anyway, moving along. It's a compatibility filter because you want to avoid, this is a long story short, okay? You want to avoid treating other people like projects to be fixed, and you want to avoid dating people who treat you like a project to be fixed. That's the long and short of it. It can get really complicated, but if you want to simplify it as much as possible, that's really the truth. Is if you only date people who see you the way you see you, you are way less likely to run into a situation where somebody's turning somebody into a project to be fixed, okay? And if you only date people that you see the way they see themselves, again, same scenario, you are way less likely to be getting into a situation where someone is viewing the other as a project to be improved upon. The reason why people tend to do this is because they don't really believe that what they want in a partner is out there. And so what they do is they settle. But instead of properly settling, they convince themselves that they can change the person, just, a little tweaking here and there, to get them to become the version of themselves that can be in a compatible relationship with us. And I used to be in this group myself. I admit, I'm not proud of it, but we live and we learn, right? I finally had a light bulb moment that instead of trying to settle for almost right, I needed to, and then try to turn almost right into what I really wanted. I could just be by myself. And even though that can be horrible as far as, emotionally getting used to the idea that you would rather be alone than be with someone who makes you feel alone. Once you finally accept that, I know this is kind of like a morbid start to the video, but once you finally accept that, it actually frees you up to be open emotionally for the right people when the right people do come along. But anyway, compatible, which I can't prove. I can't prove that, damn it. But anyways, take it or leave it. But this information is here for you if you want to check it out. So that being said, perception of others. So before we really get into talking about how to do this, how to use this information, I want to talk about what the eyeball means. So the eyeball is representative of the perception of others, but it is important to note that this eyeball is part of the cake itself. It's not a disembodied essence hovering above the cake. So as you can see here, the actual perception of others is on the left. The right-hand side is a concept that we are not discussing. We are not discussing the perception of others hovering above the cake, looking down. And the reason why is because of this next slide. My mouse is just disappearing sometimes. I don't know why it's doing that. Okay, so this is what you would see if you were hovering above the cake. So let's say you are the others in question and that you are looking at someone else. Okay, you are perceiving someone else. If you are the eyeball hovering over the cake, you get a bird's eye view of every single part of their cake, right? Every single tier. You can see from the top all the way to the bottom. And that's going to look like this. You're going to see the gender expression, their gender identity, their biogender, and their biological sex. If you were above someone else's cake looking down at it. But that's not really how it works, is it? No. I was very intentional about drawing this. When I put the eyeball as its own tier, okay? If someone else is part of your cake, if the perception of others is part of your cake, and you are part of other people's cake as an other who is doing the perceiving, this is more like what it is, okay? Your awareness is only aware of the tier that is touching it, which is the gender expression tier. So when you are perceiving other people, the only thing you're aware of is how they choose to express their feelings of masculinity and femininity. You cannot tell from their expression definitive information about their gender identity, their biogender, or their biological sex. And that's not a problem. And in fact, it's going to happen more and more often as we get into the next era of society, as we get into a time period where people feel more comfortable in their own skin, you are going to notice a lot of differences, things that don't seem to match up to the general societal expectation for what gender expression is supposed to look like, which I think is great. But because that is the case, it is important to understand this cake diagram. So, once again, the perception of others is part of the cake, which means when you are perceiving other people, the only information that you have definitive access to is how they choose to express, not necessarily what they're choosing to express, okay? Because again, you could have different ideas about what constitutes femininity versus masculinity than they have, but you do have access to how they choose to express, but nothing else, okay? This is an important slide for me to bring up in many of these presentations, because how someone chooses to express does not give you definitive information about how they feel necessarily. And that is important to note. Someone who says, "I'm happy," could have any of the facial expressions that you see below. That doesn't necessarily negate their happiness. Just because they aren't performing that happiness in a way that you expect doesn't mean it's not real. And vice versa. Just because someone is performing happiness in a way you expect doesn't mean the happiness is really there. There are people who are the happiest, smiliest people you've ever seen in your life who are contemplating suicide. And that is heartbreaking, but it is important to note that we can bring this information into conversations about expression as well. So, I haven't actually discussed pronouns at all. And there's a good reason for that. In order for me to discuss pronouns, I needed to go over every single tier of this cake. Now that I've done that, I can talk about pronouns. So, you might be asking, well, how does a person decide which pronouns to use? Well, answer the question, what information contained in which layer of the cake are you trying to communicate with your chosen pronouns? So let's go over that, because there's a lot of options here, okay? And we're going to start at the top. With perception of others. Oh, before we get into that, remember that when you are agreeing with the pronouns you were given as a child, the agreement itself is just as much of a choice as disagreeing. That's important, because I've heard so many people say that they don't have pronouns, but that's nonsense. They do have pronouns. Everybody has pronouns. If you're in the category of people who think you don't have pronouns, that's because you simply agree with the ones that were forced upon you without your consent, and that's okay. I had pronouns forced upon me, and I don't have a problem with them. I'm fine with them. They're okay. They never did me wrong. However, I still made the conscious choice not to change them. Like, as soon as you realize that changing them is an option and you choose not to, keep in mind, this is about feelings, okay? This is not about biology. So if you're making the conscious choice not to change your pronouns, That's okay. I'm in the same boat, all right? But agreeing is still a choice. I just wanted to put this slide in here because there's a lot of people who are claiming they don't have pronouns. It's like, do you know what pronouns are? Because we need to maybe have a conversation about that first. So my pronouns are she, her. They've always been she, her. Those were the ones that were given to me. I didn't ask for them, but I also don't have an issue with them. So I decided to keep them. I'm okay with that. But I still made the choice to agree. So that being said, what layer of your cake are you intending to communicate with your chosen pronouns? Let's start with the very top, perception of others. So these people are super interesting to me. I'm not in this category myself, but I am fascinated by these people because they use other people's perception of them as their entertainment. And that is just amazing to me. They say, you know what, use whatever pronouns you want. You'll see like on social media, a lot of these people will just have all of the pronouns in their bio, or they'll have like whatever you want. Pronouns, all of them. Pronouns, whatever, it's a power move. Like, use whatever you want, I don't care. Your opinion is my entertainment. I love that vibe. Again, I am not in this group myself, but these people, 10 out of 10, okay? Love that vibe. So if you genuinely do not care what pronouns people use for you, this would be the category that you choose your pronouns based on, okay? Now, next category down, gender expression. This one is the trickiest one, okay? And this one is that if you identify into this category with pronouns, this would be you believe that other people should be able to look at you and figure out, based on how you're expressing, what you're trying to express in terms of this arrow, and then decide which pronouns that they're going to use for you based on that information. And yes, I've actually seen people have this expectation on the internet. I would not advise this unless you're okay with a lot of people being wrong, because people are not going to guess right sometimes, and if that can hurt your feelings or upset you or bother you in any way, I would recommend that you not choose this tier. Of course, people can get it wrong on purpose no matter which tier you're in, right? Which is why I said it's a power move to be in the top tier. But I think the gender expression tier, using that for pronouns, is the trickiest one because it has the most room for error. So because of that, if people getting your pronouns incorrect is going to hurt your feelings, which I get it, understandable, I would recommend that you not use this tier to determine which pronouns you use, just to save your own sanity and mental health, okay? Now, if you're deciding which pronouns you use based on the gender identity category, that means the information that you're wanting to communicate to society about yourself, about your gender cake specifically, is based in static information, okay? My pronouns are what they are, and they are based in my gender identity. So you're choosing, and you're saying like, hey, my pronouns are, this is what you use. If you're gonna, and the implication here is, if you're gonna respect me, you will use the pronouns that I'm telling you to use, okay? And if you're gonna disrespect me, you will not use the pronouns that I'm telling you to use, And I want to pause here for a second and talk about me personally. In the video about gender identity, I talked a little bit about my own personal gender identity. I identify as a cisgender woman. However, I also identify as non-binary, and in that video I talked about how that's not a contradiction. So if you want a deep dive into that, please check out the gender identity video. But I want to say that I chose my pronouns based in biology, which is the next thing. However, if I had chosen my pronouns based on gender identity, then I would either be using they, them pronouns or she, they pronouns. And the reason why is because I identify as non-binary, but also cisgender, okay? So she, they, because either one wouldn't matter. But if I was wanting to communicate, because like that's the whole question, right? What are you wanting to communicate to the public with your pronouns? If I was wanting to prioritize the non-binariness of it all, I would use they, them pronouns. If I wanted to prioritize the womanness of it all, then I would use she/they pronouns. However, I'm not even getting this information from the gender identity tier, okay? I mean, it's all subjective. So someone else could be like, wait a minute, I identify as a cisgender non-binary woman as well, and I use she, they pronouns because these two concepts are perfectly equal to me. I don't think she, they is prioritizing the womanness of it all in any capacity. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. Valid, okay? Totally valid. I'm not telling you how you have to identify or that I am the be-all end-all of what these words mean. Feel free to disagree about anything I say. I'm just letting you know how I feel. And my feelings could change, by the way. I highly doubt that I'll make a dedicated YouTube video. So if you want to see that, maybe follow me on TikTok, but excuse me. This isn't even the category that I get my pronouns from, because I am not communicating my gender identity via my pronouns. This is information that I will tell people if we are in a conversation that turns into a conversation about gender identity, but it's not information that I front with. And it's totally valid if other people want to front with that information and therefore communicate that with their pronouns. Love it. Heart. It's just not me, okay? Just wanted to throw that in there, that if it were me, that's what I would do. And then finally, the last category is biology. You're saying, oh wait, I forgot about this slide. So I'll be doing that sometimes, y'all. Just forget what order my slides are in. It's fine. I'm not going to edit this. Are there cisgender men and women who choose pronouns based on their gender identity and not based on their biology? I would say yes, because I've seen so many situations, so many scenarios, so many personal stories that I've seen outliers in every single one of these situations. And I can say, yes, there are. They're outliers. But you know, outliers are still valid and they still deserve to be depicted in this chart, which is why the arrow in the gender expression section has a blue and a pink, even though I myself do not acknowledge the concept of 100% masculinity as an objective concept and 100% femininity as an objective concept. I'm still including it because I know that there are other people who would appreciate that symbolism as a way to understand this chart for their own life. So I'm still including it, you know? So, that being said, yes, there are cisgender women and men who choose pronouns based on their gender identity and not based on their biology. That is a thing. They deserve to be respected. Okay, and finally, the very last tier, which is the biology tier. My pronouns are static and based in my biology, because the information that I want to communicate when I'm telling people what my pronouns are, that information is biological. Okay, I'm communicating with people. Hey, I'm a biological female. I am a bio woman. That is the information that I am communicating with you when I am telling you what my pronouns are. And I'm okay with that. I have no desire to change that at all. Okay? I need to pop my neck. I'm not editing that out. Anyways, so alright, I hope that gives a really good understanding of the gender cake. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'm not going to answer the questions potentially if I've already answered them in a different video, so please watch all the videos in the series before you comment a question. Thank you very much, and I really appreciate everyone who has stayed and watched the entire series from beginning to end. It means a lot to me, and please feel free to engage with this content in some way if you appreciated it and you want to see more. Bye.